The following contains information which some audience members may disagree with, as it does not fall in line with all teachings of the Catholic Church or other Christian denominations. Viewer discretion is advised. Milling Through History presents The Case for Jesus. A recent study conducted on asking whether or not Jesus was a real person found that 1/3 of the respondents said no. And with an ever-growing secular society, many people begin to question whether or not Jesus Christ was a real person. Can history prove that Christ was real? Well, in looking at the sources, the first one that we have to consider is the Bible. The four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all have different takes on the life of Christ, and yet they have numerous areas where they overlap, indicating that the authors knew the story of Jesus, they knew what there was, but they all interpret it very differently. And yet, of the four Gospels is the Gospel of Mark, which has been universally agreed to have been the first Gospel written, and early accounts have even been found, which have dated back to the year 90 AD and earlier. Now, while some people might dismiss the Bible as being a potential source, there are other sources to consider. For starters, there's Flavius Josephus, who in the year 93 AD wrote a 20-volume history of the Jewish people. He was born roughly around the year 37 AD, just after the time of the crucifixion, and grew up during the early days of the Christian church. Therefore, he would have known early Christians and may have even interacted with some of Jesus' disciples. In his history, he refers to Christ twice, and in both cases, does mention him as being the Messiah. Now, some scholars have criticized the quotation of referring to Christ as a Messiah and believe that Christian scribes may have actually written that specific word into his histories. But while that eliminates only one of the two times he mentions Jesus, the other time he writes Christos, which is a rather notable term citing the fact that Jesus was being called the Christ. Another location would be through Roman historians. In fact, Roman history itself has a number of individuals during the life of Christ who we have proven did exist. Emperor Augustus, Herod the Great, Herod Antipas, Pontius Pilate, all existed. According to Suetonius, Emperor Claudius would actually expel Jews from Rome who were, quote, making constant disturbance at the instigation of Christus, the Latin term for Christ. Pliny the Younger, who was a Roman governor, wrote to Emperor Trajan that early Christians would, quote, sing hymns to Christ as to a god. The most notable Roman historian, Tacitus, would write in the year 116 AD about the burning of Rome, which had occurred just a little over 50 years earlier. He had said that while Rome burned, Nero would blame the people known as the Christians, who were hated for their enormities. Christus, the founder of the name, was put to death by Pontius Pilate, procurator of Judea in the reign of Tiberius. Now, many scholars who have studied Roman history have noted that Tacitus was never one to go ahead and go off on a tangent. Rather, all of his histories were kept concise, straight to the point, and if follow-up information was needed, he would actually put that in there. Only if it was frivolous would he ever note, this is not important information, but interesting to know. But in this case of Christus that he is writing about, he does not make that particular notation. Therefore, a very serious Roman historian acknowledges the existence of Jesus Christ. But for people who say they need physical evidence, archaeology does provide at least some evidence to go with. In 1990, the tomb of Caiaphas was accidentally discovered as bulldozers inadvertently broke open the family tomb. Found in the area known as the Peace Forest, it is extremely close to the valley of Hinnom, where it was said Judas would hang himself after betraying Jesus. Now, the tomb of Caiaphas found two different ossuary boxes with the name on it, indicating one was the Father and one was the Son, both of whom have been cited being at the trial of Jesus Christ. Through the histories of Josephus, the site of where Christ was executed was also found, or at least found by Christian belief, and even through scale diagrams, they have been able to roughly place its location within Jerusalem. And perhaps the most potential controversial piece was found by Oded Golan, and that is the James ossuary, which is a bone box which is said to be that of James the Just, and on it, it claims to be that James was the brother of Jesus. And while physical evidence is certainly circumstantial, there is certainly a case to say that yes, Jesus was a real person. There may not be a smoking gun, but when you have Roman historians, Jewish historians, archaeological data all coming together, it is certainly safe to say Jesus was a real person. Be sure to click like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History, and be sure to leave comments below for future episode ideas.